we just got some pretty special Fallout mods. Just recently, I made a video and talked about how modders are overhauling the Commonwealth, and well, lo and behold, they are still overhauling the Commonwealth. As of late, there's been this pretty interesting trend with modding that adds in a small feature or a large feature that ends up actually having a pretty lasting impact across an entire playthrough with your experience with Fallout 4 and its world. And in particular today, we have one that a lot of people have been wanting for a very long time, a very special mod. But in beyond that, we do have some other releases around some of the older Fallout games, adding in content from other games into Fallout 4, turning it into that ultimate experience, and really just a ton of great content coming out as of late. Although just recently on the channel, we have been having some issues with demonetization on content that I thought was okay. But to help protect this video from YouTube's demonetization gods, I needed some help. And that is today's video sponsor with Raid. Raid gives you access to over 500 champions, each featuring their own unique skills, allowing you to build your own unique team and even develop some of your champions along the way. And one of the newly added legendary champions is a particularly unique one, as now you could actually find Ninja in Raid Shadow Legends. If that is not a combination made of meme potential, I don't know what is. Memes aside though, in this game, Ninja is actually pretty good, being one of the best champions in those extended boss fights. My favorite aspect of Raid is all the various types of gameplay you'll encounter, whether it be a big bad boss fight, getting sweaty against some other players in the PvP arena, or even just trying to conquer a dungeon and get some of that awesome loot. And along the way, I'm always changing up my team and champions to find the best one for each situation. You can get the Ninja champion totally for free right now, but not quickly because he's only available until October 15th, as well as the game just got a big clan update, adding new benefits to joining a clan, a new clan shop, and even some quests you and your clan members can work on together. If you want to jumpstart in Raid, all you're going to need to do is click on that link in the description or scan this QR code right here. If you're a new player, you'll get this epic hero, 200,000 silver, 1 XP boost, 1 energy refill, and even 1 ancient shard so you can summon an awesome champion as soon as you get online. And I do have to admit, this champion is particularly cool. You'll find extra rewards here in your inbox in the next 30 days only. But first and foremost, what I want to take a look at is this really special mod that recently came out known as Mutant Menagerie. And this is actually a really cool one, as it almost is in a class of its own with Fallout 4 modding in that there are basically no other mods to do this. There's actually one other mod that does this. In effect, what this mod is going to do is actually a couple of things. The biggest being is there's going to be a ton of new creatures in the Commonwealth. This will be both creatures from some of the Fallout 4 DLC, so you'll see Nuka World as well as Far Harbor creatures in the Commonwealth now, which actually makes a lot of sense. Only the creatures that do make sense. And even with some of those creatures, they have edited variants to be lower level now, but even further, a ton of newly added creatures that have never been before seen in the Commonwealth, but are all pretty lore friendly. At the end of the day, the vast majority of these are just kind of irradiated creatures. So even though technically some of them have never appeared in a Fallout game before, it does make sense that creatures that would pop up in New England would appear in Fallout 4, and this adds that in, and adds in a ton. It's actually really cool. Just now when exploring and playing through Fallout 4, you will not only see more variety, but just a lot more creatures in general. And not all of these are passive. Many of these creatures are hostile, and when they see you, they will attack you. Some of them being rather large and deadly. You definitely want to be prepared when exploring at points now. And as I mentioned before, there are very few mods to actually do this, and fewer even to do it on this scale, to add in a plethora of new things to find all throughout the Commonwealth. And this mod's actually designed in a pretty cool way in that you'll actually be able to hunt in the game as almost a viable playstyle, especially on survival mode. So obviously most of the creatures in the game will drop meats that can be cooked into certain foods, but also there are a bunch of new recipes added that are even more powerful. So if you do devote a bunch of time to hunting or finding some of these creatures, you could get some pretty powerful rewards. Not to mention that some of the bigger creatures do have a ton of junk and even some other items on them. Many do have legendary variants out there. And there's also a cool mechanic where, depending on when you kill a creature, you'll get a certain type of pelt quality. Obviously, the better quality pelts yielding more resources than the lower quality ones. And it definitely does feel like with this mod installed, not only do you have a more lively Commonwealth with just a lot more novelty, you'll be stumbling upon new things way more often. But again, in particular on that survival mode, it really does make hunting a viable playstyle and something you will likely end up relying on to eat food. All the while, it's not really a heavy mod. You could totally ignore this and just passively encounter those creatures while doing other quests or exploring, so I think it's a great one to have in the back of your load order. But naturally, with a ton of new creatures creatures in Fallout 4, you're probably going to want some weapons to actually deal with them. So on that front, we also do have several new additions to Fallout 4 that I think are decently appropriate. The first of which is the Remington Model 11 shotgun, and I really like this one. It's going to add in a semi-automatic shotgun into Fallout 4. The shotgun itself looks great. It has the standard set of customization options you would expect, rails on the top, rails on the bottom, so you'd have all kinds of different attachments, scopes, etc. But I also really like this one because it does have built-in functionality for a lot of the popular mods out there. So things like see-through scopes, tactical reload, and even bullet-counted reload will work. And just overall, it's a solid shotgun. You can convert it into a bunch of different styles with different ammo types, whether you want Dragon's Breath for that extreme fun factor, or especially with hunting, you'd have slug shells to shoot enemies from afar. Depending on what you're hunting, another pretty handy one could be the M60 and M60E3. This is technically two different weapon mods, the M60 and M60E3, both ported from other games and implemented very well into Fallout 4. Really at their core, they're just pretty well polished and quality heavy machine guns for this game, but at the same time, they don't actually have a lot in the way of customization. What you see is largely what you're getting, but that really isn't a bad thing because these are a blast to use. Fallout 4, and even in the modding scene, although it's been getting better as of late, and even after this video, just doesn't really have a lot of machine guns. There's very few options out there, and having two great new options added to the game with this mod is definitely a positive, especially if you want to take hunting to the absolute extreme in Fallout 4. Although another really cool one that's definitely one of those kind of small feature, big impact mods is human grab attacks. This is the latest release in the grab attack series, and perhaps the most impactful, as functionally what this mod is going to do is make it so sometimes when enemies attack you with a melee attack, but also when you use a power attack on enemies, it'll actually do one of the kill move animations, but obviously not actually a kill move. So in effect, enemies could do an attack on you, and there's a wide variety of different attacks and animations that will kind of stun you or actually drop you to the floor, requiring you to get up. Typically, those are those kill move animations if an enemy is doing a finishing blow on you, but this will add those into regular combat, so somebody could just do that to you to temporarily incapacitate you. It's honestly really fun, and it makes melee enemies way more of a threat. I feel like in particular with Fallout 4, a lot of the times I don't have much issue with melee enemies, but when many of those enemies do have the ability to actually push you down, they do become a lot bigger of a threat. But on the flip side, you also can do it a lot easier to other enemies, whether it be with a regular weapon or with a melee weapon. By using a power attack or the bash key, you can also take enemies down, which adds in a really interesting dynamic to combat, especially when you're getting charged by multiple enemies. Overall, it's a really cool one. It definitely creates some pretty interesting situations and a nice dynamic to combat overall. And also, if you're frustrated with getting taken down so much, there is another mod that makes it so you could stand up even a bit quicker to reduce the impact overall. But then we have what I think is just an absolutely great looking power armor mod for Fallout 4, and that is the Enclave XO2 Black Devil power armor. This, of course, being that XO2 power armor to appear in past Fallout games, specifically in Fallout 3. And even though there's been a few mods adding in this thus far to Fallout 4, I think this may be my favorite one. The visuals on this just look really freaking good. It does have a singular spawn location in the Sentinel site. I'm not going to spoil anything with that though for those of you that want to stumble upon it yourself. But from there, you do have the full-fledged power armor that does have a variety of customization options. At its core, there's a few different paint jobs. You could have default one, the Enclave one, or even a Brotherhood of Steel one. But also, there's a couple of other more interesting and fun customization options. There's a prototype shoulder and head that does have a slightly different look. I definitely prefer the original one, but I definitely like the option also. And even further, of course, it has to have the Tesla variant. That just looks absolutely amazing. But since we are in the theme of heavier things in Fallout with this power armor, I also want to take a look at Machineguns Rebirth, as this is easily one of the coolest weapon packs we have for Fallout 4 right now. Granted, there's only actually a couple of weapon packs, but even still, this is a particularly special weapon mod. At its core, what it's going to do is add in 4 new heavy weapons into Fallout 4. The WH Mark 22 heavy machine gun, which is a pretty familiar looking one, has that general machine gun style, and actually even similar to that, we also do have the WH Mark 19 Shrike general purpose machine gun, which definitely does have a different and distinctive look, but also pretty similar. Those two are kind of in the same family, as you could definitely tell. But then, in a bit of a different vein, we also do have just a flat-out flak gun, which will return to how awesome this thing is in a moment. And then last but not least, a grenade launcher with the West Tech AGL 40. And although these weapons definitely look great, and that is a strong suit of this mod mod in general. Where this really shines is when you're just holding it in first person and firing, as this mod just does a phenomenal job of making it feel like you're truly firing something that is a giant caliber, that you are only barely able to fully control and also just can blast away enemies at will. These weapons are just so much fun to take out and just try and mow down an entire room of enemies. The first two definitely have a pretty distinctive style. When you get into the flak gun, it is a bit different, a slower rate of fire, but you really feel the weight behind some of these shots as they land, and also just the noises really convey how large of a round you are firing. And then a high rate of fire grenade launcher. What is not to love? You can absolutely decimate entire groups of enemies very quickly, and depending on how you configure this one, you could actually make it so these have static spawns in the Commonwealth, so you have to go out and find these individually. They won't just be in level list, which is kind of a cool way to integrate this. As you saw earlier, they do have some basic customization options. With some of these, you could actually change the fire type, so it could be explosive ammo. You could change what type of grenades the grenade launcher does fire. And although all of that is cool, regardless of what ammo type or even which weapon you are using, these are just a treat to use. And I think it is the most enjoyable to use heavy weapon mod for Fallout 4 out right now. Hopefully the video speaks for itself, but when you're actually using these in game, it just is actually a pretty special experience. And the fact that you have 4 different options to choose from with this singular download just even brings it up a bit higher on my tier list. And I mean, yeah, if you really want to take hunting in the Commonwealth to the next extreme, you definitely could hunt turkeys with the grenade launcher. Bit unorthodox, but hey, it works all the same. And before we end this one off, finally, I do want to give another update on the whole mod deletion saga and current standing. Not going to go into everything here, but if you haven't been following it, there were some changes on Nexus mods, leading to many mod authors pulling their mods altogether, deleting their mods, or just not supporting the mods on Nexus anymore. So the deadline for actually being able to pull your mods completely has passed. So right now, if the mod is on Nexus, it technically cannot be deleted. You can delete the mod page, but an archive version of the mod download itself will still be available. And some mods were definitely deleted towards the end here. A couple of those around Fallout 4 New Vegas by Toasty Fresh, notably the Colt Single Action Army and the Fallout 4 New Vegas anti-material rifle. It's not technically clear if this was due to the Nexus policy change. He just cited personal reasons, but how they will be re-uploaded at a later date. A couple of Tukey Jones's mods were removed, most notably Survivalist Go Bags, which was a really awesome backpack mod. Arthmore removed some of his mods on the final day, or at least he claimed to have submitted a request, but many of his mods are still alive. This predominantly on the Skyrim side. He's part of the team that works on the unofficial patch for Fallout 4 and Skyrim. Those are not being removed, those will remain, but those are some of the other names to pull their things in the interim, or at least since the last time I talked about this. As it stands right now, there isn't a clear and definitive Nexus alternative. There's a couple of websites out there, but not really just one clear-cut answer. There have been some discussions with some of the communities on Fallout 4 side to actually create a proper Nexus alternative. Definitely some bigger modders behind that, so it'll be interesting to see what happens, but as it stands right now, that was kind of it, at least for now. The deadline to remove your mods has come and gone at this point, so everything else will seemingly be staying. And even further, we don't even know when mod collections, the whole mod pack system to cause a lot of this drama, is coming. Technically, collections still have no release date, although there's supposedly going to be a beta version of it at some point, so time will tell with that, and it'll be interesting to see what actually happens with collections when they go live. Will it lead to a bunch of additional modders not actually pulling their mods because they can't, but not supporting their mods or deleting their mod pages on Nexus? Either way, that's the update. I didn't really think it was worthy of a full video, but with that said, as always again, I thank you for watching this one. Thanks again to Raid for sponsoring this video. I know not everyone loves sponsorships, but with that recent video demonetization, taking sponsors like that just really helps secure the channel, make things more predictable. But as always again, I hope you enjoyed, and I hope to see you all next time. Later.